Have you ever wondered if you're actually talented? Or if you're simply you've convinced yourself that you are? That question usually appears after years of offering your best work to people who barely acknowledge it. But what if those people's silence isn't evidence of your inadequacy? What if your excellence is invisible because the people evaluating it lack the capacity to recognize it? Today we are going to be breaking free from the exhausting pursuit of validation, and we're going to be reclaiming our worth from audiences committed to misunderstanding us. One of the most painful experiences in life is not criticism. At least criticism acknowledges your existence. What truly unsettles us is silence. The unanswered emails, the overlooked contributions, the idea nobody responds to, the effort that seems to disappear without acknowledgement. And because the human mind is wired to seek explanations, we often create one. We would say things like, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe my work isn't valuable. Maybe I don't matter. But what if that's the wrong conclusion? That's not true. What if the silence says more about the observer than it does about you? Today we are exploring why excellence is often invisible to those who lack the internal tools to perceive it, and why your worth cannot be measured by people who benefit from overlooking it. You know yourself. When people fail to recognize us, we rarely leave the situation unexplained. We may even create stories. Stories become assumptions. Assumptions become beliefs, and beliefs become identities. A single moment of being overlooked can slowly evolve into a lifelong narrative of inadequacy. Yet most of these narratives are based on incomplete information. Silence is not always rejection. Lack of recognition is not always a reflection of quality. Sometimes people simply lack the ability to see what stands before them. And that's the problem. Human beings are social creatures. We evolve in communities where belonging often determines survival. As a result, external feedback carries enormous psychological weight and importance. Praise feels like safety, recognition feels like belonging, approval even feels like confirmation. But this creates a vulnerability when external validation becomes our primary source of self-worth. Our identity becomes dependent upon people whose perceptions may be deeply flawed. What we have to remember, one of the strangest habits we develop is granting authority to other people who have not earned it. Someone's opinion affects us simply because they expressed it. Someone's silence affects us because they withheld attention. But why? Why do we allow people to evaluate areas they don't understand? You wouldn't ask someone unfamiliar with music to judge a symphony, right? You wouldn't ask someone unfamiliar with architecture to critique a cathedral, would you? Yet, routinely, we allow unqualified observers around us to determine the outcome of a situation. Every form of excellence requires context. Without context, brilliance can appear ordinary, innovation can appear disruptive, and depth can appear complicated. Vision can even appear unrealistic. People cannot appreciate what they do not understand. Take note of that. And unfortunately, many of us interpret their confusion as evidence of our failure. The problem isn't always the quality of the signal. Sometimes it's the limitation of the receiver. One thing you must remember is when your excellence disrupts existing systems, not all invisibility is accidental. Sometimes people benefit from minimizing your contributions. They may benefit from minimizing your growth, or your growth challenges existing hierarchies. Your competence may threaten established narratives, and your success may force uncomfortable comparisons. In these particular situations, acknowledging your excellence requires others to confront truths they would rather avoid. So they ignore it, they minimize it, they dismiss it, or they pretend it doesn't exist. One of the most subtle forms of manipulation occurs when people consistently downplay your strengths. Not because those strengths are absent, but because acknowledging them would require change. This creates a dangerous cycle. You begin to question abilities that were never actually lacking. You even start shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. You may even become smaller in environments that cannot tolerate your expansion. And over time, their perception starts replacing your reality. So, my dear friends, at some point, every person committed to growth must answer a difficult question. Who determines my value? Is it the crowd? Is it the algorithm? Is it the workplace? The family system? The social circle? Or my radical self-governance begins when your answer changes. You stop outsourcing your worth. You stop waiting for permission, and you stop asking audiences to confirm what you already know. You're worthy. Internal validation isn't arrogance, it's clarity. It means you've developed standards that are not vulnerable to external manipulation. You know your efforts. You know your abilities. You know your discipline. You know your growth. You know your integrity. And those measurements remain valid regardless of the applause you get. Because applause is inconsistent and character is not. So, not everyone can reflect you accurately. A mirror must be clear to provide an accurate reflection. Likewise, people require certain internal capacities to recognize excellence. emotional maturity, wisdom, experience, self-awareness, and without these qualities, their feedback becomes distorted. Not maliciously, just limited. The importance of quality peers is that the goal is not isolation, the goal is to discern. You still need mirrors. You need quality mirrors, of course. People capable of recognizing your strengths and your blind spots. People who challenge your growth without diminishing your worth. People who understand the language of your particular gift. Because not every audience is your audience, and not every room deserves access to your brilliance. So, the ultimate power move is that most people respond to invisibility by performing harder, working harder, explaining more, trying again, seeking even approval more aggressively. But what if that's exactly what keeps the cycle alive? What if the true power move is disengagement? Not quitting, not giving up, simply redirecting your energy. Stop performing for the wrong audience. You cannot force recognition. You cannot manufacture appreciation. You cannot even convince people to value what they have already decided to ignore. But you can choose where your energy goes. You can choose who gets access to your gift. You can choose environment aligned with your purpose. And that choice changes everything. Redirecting towards alignment. Every minute spent proving yourself to the wrong audience is a minute unavailable for the right one. Your brilliance deserves fertile ground. Your contribution deserves appreciation. Your purpose deserves alignment. The goal is not universal approval. The goal is finding spaces capable of recognizing what you naturally bring. So, my dear friends, to conclude today's reflection, remember, there will always be people who cannot see you, not because you are not visible, but simply because they are looking through lenses too limited to recognize what stands before them. Do not confuse their blindness with your lack of value. Do not confuse their silence with your inadequacy. Do not even confuse their misunderstanding with your failure. Take note, your excellence existed before they noticed it, and it will continue to exist whether they ever do. The moment you stop performing for those committed to misunderstanding you is the moment you begin belonging to yourself, because your worth was never created by their recognition, and it cannot be destroyed by their silence. Protect it, trust it, build from it, and let your excellence find the rooms that already possess the capacity to see it. So, my dear friends, if today's reflection resonated with you, please leave your thoughts in the comment section below. As usual, please like, share, and come back for more reflections on healing, growth, and becoming. This channel is for us to grow together as we continue inspiring you with life wisdom today, tomorrow, and in the future. Thanks for watching.